Over the course of this constitutional process that began with John Howard's commitment on the eve of the 2007 election, I've met hundreds and thousands of people and considered where they come from in this debate, where they come from in relation to their place in Australia. I think about the Methodist who became Prime Minister, in his own words, the most conservative ever in his party, and yet he felt there was a need that Australia had to move to a new settlement between non-Indigenous and Indigenous Australians. Whatever his position is still today, his speech on that election eve is probably the most compelling case for recognition. It's worth reading again. But I've also met Prime Ministers who were born overseas. And I wondered whether they were up for recognition. Well, the Labor lady was. She was born in Wales. And the English Prime Minister, born in Lambeth, was once enthusiastic but has turned coat. And I wonder how it is that a man born in Lambeth, who calls Australia home, and certainly it is his home, could have a question about recognising the original peoples of this country. I've met lots of old Australians, people who can count their forebears as convicts and free settlers in the earliest days of the colony in Sydney. I've met many peoples who've come in between, including Chinese, whose antecedents in Australia go back to the 19th century. Many of them have been here longer than a great many others. And I've met lots of Jews having fled horror and made Australia their home. Australia became a refuge for all of them, fleeing war and trouble back in their homelands. I've met lots of Palestinians, anxious about their situation back home, but feeling Australia has given them a new home. I've met Greeks, Italians, so many migrants from the post-war period, some of whom are so supportive of the Yes campaign, and some of whom are not. I've met many Australians who've done very, very well in this country, and yet are churlish about whether Indigenous people should be recognised in their own country. They think they should pull themselves up by the bootstraps. They think they should do the same hard yards they did. They have no idea. My father couldn't go to a school. He was at least as intelligent as me, if not more. His great unrequited love was education. But you could only go to grade 3 when you were in the mission. Blacks in America were afforded access to education and universities a century more than before us. My church, the Lutherans, started giving access in the 1960s to St. Peter's down the road. Very late in the day, but long before the government. The doors of opportunity simply weren't open. people of my community and met all over the countryside, how much farther advanced would we have been had we been treated with some kindness and understanding that the doors of opportunity needed to be opened from the inside. So I've met many people who don't seem to pause and reflect that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples have no other home overseas. They can't wish for Ireland. They can't wish for Scotland. They can't wish for Vietnam. Australia is their only home. With recognition, Australians would afford us the right to call this country our home too. Our Constitution, which has that lacuna, that gap, that missing piece, we vote yes on October the 14th. It is a simple proposition, and I'm proud to say the authors of that proposition are in this room. A Catholic Vice-Chancellor convening a meeting in his presbytery with two Jewish young friends and a reprobate Aboriginal leader and his young Indian, Fijian legal advisor. And we discussed this problem of constitutional recognition because the provision that was then circulating was not feasible. It had come out of a long and considered process, but it was never going to fly. And it was that problem that we raised in Greg's presbytery at the Australian Catholic University. And this genius young migrant girl, together with these Jewish friends from childhood, helped us come up with the idea of a voice, an advisory body to the Parliament. And a very brilliant constitutional lawyer from the University of Sydney, Professor Toomey, joined us, and she helped us put together a first version of the voice. That was in 2014. And the process evolved from there. It was adopted as the key concept in 2017 with the Uluru Statement from the Heart. There were many, many proposals, different proposals for recognition. And all of them had been considered, but the Aboriginal people at Uluru took seriously the advice of former Chief Justice Murray Gleeson. Murray said to us, pick one. If you're going to have any chance, don't throw everything in the bucket. Pick wisely the one reform you want and put that forward to the Australian people. That advice was taken on board by Indigenous representatives, and they chose the voice. Of all of the different ideas, it was the voice that spoke most urgently and deeply to our people. We put it forward, and the immediate reaction was, that's a third chamber of Parliament. And it was really thanks to Julian, Lisa, and Ken Wyatt that the voice was kept alive for many years. Good people in the Liberal Party who kept the voice alive over a very tenuous period and kept it alive, kept hope alive, so that we could eventually reach this point. I would have loved bipartisanship today. God knows we strived for bipartisanship. We started with Howard. We stuck with the Liberals. We had more support from National Party representatives than we did from Liberals. I could point you to dozens of people in the National Party today who were against the voice, who were for the voice over the last 10 years. The bipartisanship fell apart late last year because Jacinta forced a choice inside the National Party. And Littleproud, I think, in the absence of Jacinta, would have probably taken a moderate stance. But Jacinta forced the party to choose a party of which she strictly was not a member. She was from the CLP in the Northern Territory, not the National Party. But a combination of Jacinta's insistence that the party choose and Barnaby's machinations behind the scene, seeking to use this question as a political liability for his own leadership re-ambitions, forced the Nationals into that fateful decision. And of course, my belief is Peter Dutton would have striven to see a way through with this, to find a way through. He'd certainly told me that. But the National Party's decision had kind of made his decision for himself, is my view. So we're in a marginal seat campaign. The whole thing's kind of resided from a bipartisan shared commitment to changing the Constitution that had lasted for 14 years and only fallen apart in the last year. Could Labor have handled it better? Could Labor have facilitated the politics better? My own view is that the fatal political event was their election in May last year. And who could blame the Labor Party for that? It was the exercise of the federal mandate by us, the Australian people. We gave federal government to the Labor Party to lead the country. And the Prime Minister led the country by making this a priority. The second thing I want to talk about, sorry I'm going over time, but the second thing I want to talk about is the provision itself. First line is this: in recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the first peoples of Australia. I think they're profound words. It's like, so simple. You know, if you wanted to be, it's just a statement of fact. But it's more than that. We're putting it in the Constitution in order to use Greg's words, in order to make a moral statement in our founding document about the country, that the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples were the first peoples of Australia. First provision then sets out a guarantee or a promise by the Australian people to our people, an important promise, a constitutional promise, not a legislative one: there shall be a body Of all of the things we can cling to in this provision, it is that guarantee, there shall be a body. It means the Australian people are giving that guarantee, not the Parliament or the government. If we approve this referendum, we get this promise from the Australian people and no one else. The next provision deals with what the body will do. Well, it will make representations to the Parliament and the executive government. Professor Toomey explained that making representations is democracy 101. Everybody does it, miners do it, farmers do it. The pharmacy lobby does it. And they're very good at it. We're just going to do representations like everybody else. I was a bit shocked, Greg, when Anne just explained representations like that. Where they'll hear, listen, but not be bound. As with every representation, you're going to get some up and some you're not going to get up. And on what? On matters relating to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Not all of those Lint Cafe siege, Peter Credlin said. If there's an Aboriginal gunman, the police would have to ring the voice first. Interest rates, nuclear submarines, everything else. And sorry, I can't miss the opportunity in this context to say that I think Jesus would struggle to put the Beatitudes in the Bible today. Blessed are the meek would be so controversial. There'd be so many opinions on it. Blessed. What about me? It isn't fair that the blessed are getting something that I'm not getting. And the meek, who are the meek? Why not the arrogant? They deserve something too. And then the real clincher is, shall inherit the earth. There's the backyards, there's the beaches, there's the national parks. The whole show's gone if Jesus puts that in the Bible. Yes, constitutional lawyers can argue about anything, but some of the arguments are just completely bizarre, and they've flooded the zone, which is a tactic. A tactic in a contest like this involves flooding the zone with all kinds of rubbish. And that's what the No campaign are doing. And finally, the detail, the Parliament shall have power to make laws. There's the detail. It's Parliament's role in making laws. That's the answer to detail. It's always the case in our system. The Constitution provides the power, Parliament provides the details, including in relation to composition, functions, powers and procedures of the voice. So I just wanted to zero in on the actual provision we're voting on. And finally, lots of people are talking about the day after. I don't like to think about it. I agree with Greg. We have got a power to the prize ahead of us and not embrace any thought that anything other than success is acceptable. But there is going to be heartbreak to the point of loss of faith. We're better off knowing the price now than in the wake of it. And so that we avoid it. Let's know the price so that we avoid the price. There will be heartbreak to the point of loss of faith. I don't mean that in a religious sense entirely. I mean it because I tell my church, my little church, the Lutherans, that it is likely from all of my readings around the countryside, we'll get more Muslims on side than members of my church. Heartbreak to the point of loss of faith in the country, loss of faith in Australia. That's the price. And I want to avoid that price, absolutely. It'll be frustration to the point of despair. Frustration is normal in life, in politics, in policy, in government, in administration. Frustration is just part and parcel. But despair is the thing I'm worried about. Someone whose day job is to work on the uplift of my people, who's always got to maintain hope, always got to urge our people to maintain hope, this will be a frustration that goes way beyond anything in the past. The depth of despair we will have about this, given how long we've fought for this, is something I absolutely want to avoid. And finally, rejection to the point of alienation. That's a price. This will be a rejection to the point of utmost alienation. We'll still be alive the next day, but we won't be much proud of where we'll be at as a country, who we will be as a people, and we'll be completely bereft, in my view, about where we go next. Thank you.